Hi everyone, I'm Joe. Today it's time for me to do my monthly wrap up for October 2019. October was a really good month in total. I read 12 books by 12 authors comprising 3 genres. I also liked 8 out of the 12 books that I read. So it's also a fairly successful month as well. And without further delay, I'll get straight to talking about the books themselves. First of which is a reread for me, and that is Killing Floor by Jack Reacher. Actually, it's by Lee Child. The series is called Jack Reacher, in fact. And I decided that I wanted to reread something fairly simple and straightforward, and just that I know that I enjoyed in the past. And the Jack Reacher books cover that very well indeed, because the basic premise of all of the books is very simple, and that is Jack Reacher is an American ex-military policeman. Since leaving the army, he wanders around America exploring, which is something he could not do when he was in the military, because he was moving around military bases in different countries. And because of his military police experience and just his also appearance, because he's a very large man, he's like 6.5 foot tall, he keeps getting into situations and has to get out of them, and he also tends to help people when he sees them sort of in trouble as well. He keeps getting into situations, has to sort of rescue people out of them. He also solves some sort of mild crimes or some pretty big crimes, as the case may be in some cases. This is a good example of it. It's written in a very simple way, short sentences, uncomplicated language. The twists and turns are very blatant and obvious. Frankly, you can predict every single thing that's going to happen at this point. It does have some iconic scenes in the book, as do all the books. They have some really nicely written scenes, which I greatly enjoy, and it's just a nice, easy start to the month. The second book also happened to be a reread, although I'm rereading this because I'm also planning to do a review of it, and that is Consider Phlebas by Iain M. Banks. This is the first novel in the Culture universe, of which there are 10 in total. This is the only one I have read in the past, so it's a reread. And my idea is I'm going to read all 10 Culture novels and do a separate review for every single one of them, starting with this one. So I will just say now that this is a quite a large scale science fiction novel. It is set around the idea of, in this particular case, of a ship mine, which is artificial intelligence. One of these mines essentially gets lost or abandoned, I suppose you could say, and ends up on this planet. Everybody wants this mine for itself because it's a fairly new, young mine. If they can get hold of it, they can use it to their own ends and have, both good and negative effects out of it. And it's a very complex, dense plot, which I really enjoyed and I would give a review of in the future, but I would recommend this a lot because it's strange indeed, but very worthwhile once you've read it. The third book I read happens to be the third book in a series, and that is the Bourne Ultimatum, written by Robert Ludlum. Now this is the final book in the Bourne universe that Ludlum wrote himself. He died after writing this book. The series was continued by another author. After this point, there are now over 10 books in this series. I'm not planning to continue reading more beyond this one because frankly I'm glad that I read the 3 Bourne trilogy books. They were made into movies years ago, starring Matt Damon. I loved the movies. When I started reading this book and I did the other 2 books in the trilogy, I knew they were not going to be the films in book form. They are blatantly not, especially being espionage thrillers. The time zone is also different as well, because these are set in the late 80s. Obviously the Bourne trilogy films are set in the present day, over 10 years ago now, so they were more modern. However, I was expecting it to be, considering it's espionage thrillers, it to be a bit more faster paced and a bit more, collected and together. And it was slow and plodding and The plot took ages to get started, and frankly it took ages to get finished. The characters, which I sort of knew the very basic names of due to the films, were also not very well developed in ways that I would have liked. And I thought I was quite disappointed by this book. I mean, frankly, it's quite a long book, and it took me a while to get through it just because I was sort of forcing myself in the end. I wasn't really enjoying it, I have to say. It might work for some people, but the pacing was off for me on this book quite badly. The idea is, you know, obviously, Jason Bourne is the amnesiac assassin found floating in the ocean, gets picked up by a fisherman, which is the same as the movies. He goes to a doctor in Port Hills Up, which starts to diverge from the films, of course, and then he starts to rediscover who he was before he became, you know, Jason Bourne, this sort of strangely military and weirdly trained assassin. It's a nice premise, but I prefer the films, frankly, over the books in this case. The fifth book that I read was Whose Body by Dorothy L. Sayers, and I loved this book, I really did. This is the first book in the Lord Peter Wimsey mystery series. The main character is, as you might have guessed, Lord Peter Wimsey. He is an upper class sort of nobleman or posh sort of you know, idiot in English aristocracy, you know, the sort of stereotypical view, at least by appearances, and he sort of bumbles around apparently, and he has an interest in crime, so he gets himself involved, in this case, in a murder, and tries to, you know, talk to people and solve the crime as much as he can, which he does successfully, because, you know, that's blatantly obvious. I mean, there are at least 15 books in this series. This is an older mystery book written in the 1920s maybe, or even earlier than that, and I like this and would recommend it because it's a very short book, but all the writing is to the point, focused, well written. The characters are fun and enjoyable to read about. Their interactions work well, and the plot works well and is intelligently done. So I would recommend this very highly. The next book that I read was The Redbreast by Joe Nesbo. This is the third book in the Harry Hole Mysteries, although it is the first book that was translated into English from the Norwegian, because Joe Nesbo is Norwegian, and indeed the books are set in Norway, although he does make trips to other countries like Sweden, for instance, which he goes to briefly in this book. I think Sweden. And in this book, essentially the crime is that somebody gets hold of and brings into the country, into Norway, a very high-powered sniper rifle, the sort of sniper rifle that you can't buy for hunting or any other reason like that. This is designed for killing in war zones, and in this case, obviously, going to be used for an assassination of some kind. And indeed, that's where the book starts off, because an ex World War II Nazi sympathiser gets murdered. Then, after a while later, Harry's ex-partner gets murdered. Then it becomes very personal to him, because obviously his ex-partner, he wants to find out what's going on, and it starts spiralling and curving into ways. The plot was intelligently written, it was tightly plotted, it was the characters were fantastic. The character of Harry Hole, I think, is a really interesting one, because he obviously had his issues in the past. He's well thought of, but he's also got, you know, his own neuroses and his own sort of hang-ups and things from what's happened in the past. And the way he interacts with certain characters is really quite interesting to see. And overall, I really like this. And obviously, the environment is a little bit different as well, because this is in Norway, which is an environment that I'm vaguely used to, because I do know a few people from there, but not too much. So it's interesting to see this environment, and obviously this is a sort of detective thriller. So seeing the detective system and obviously the law enforcement Norwegian style was interesting, rather than seeing either UK or American, which is very well known by this point. But I would recommend this highly because it was well written and I liked it overall. And it's reasonable level, nothing exceptionally long, so it's not all that difficult to read as well. The next book that I read was By the Light of the Moon by Dean Koontz. This is a sort of strange science fiction novel where at the start of the novel there are 3 characters, 2 brothers and a female comedian. They check into a motel and then all of a sudden they find themselves drugged, tied to chairs, and they get injected in their arms by some strange, sort of fairly crazed looking guy with some sort of strange substance. He tells them that this stuff, which is obviously a very strange word to use by itself, will have weird and wonderful effects on them, and this scares them really badly. Very shortly afterwards, he gets blown up in his car by sort of these mysterious covert government agents. They go on the run and he goes from there in some rather strange and unexpected manner. I actually really like this overall. I mean, I've heard people say before that the plot is meandered off in a strange way and it doesn't make any sense, frankly. But actually it does if you go by the fact that this is a sort of a covert government type situation, some sort of mysterious scientist, he does something to them, and then it's kind of almost espionage but not quite, but obviously it's got the science fiction element with whatever this stuff is, which you do learn about being injected into them, what it does to them as well, what effects it might have, you will learn. And it's a sort of curious novel because they interact in a really interesting way together, because of course there are 3 different characters who would normally be spending time together, well, the 2 brothers would, and it's an interesting mixture which I really liked, and I would recommend this if you're looking for something a little bit different than the normal and something a bit bizarre with ideas and things. I did it quite well, I think, and I did quite like this actually overall. The next book I read was The Godfather by Mario Puzo, and I have finally read this book. I've always wanted to read The Godfather because, of course, Martin Scorsese made into a trilogy of films many years ago, which I've never watched, by the way, because I'm actually got very little interest in sort of mafia gangster type crime films, and obviously this is the book version of it. I liked this though. I was kind of half expecting to dislike it quite badly, and there were some parts that I was not keen on, frankly. I mean, the treatment of female characters, frankly all of them, by male characters in this book was awful. It's understandable because these are sort of like, mafioso type characters, and their opinion of women is basically as meat, frankly, which is something I obviously don't agree with, and no normal person would. It's hard to stomach at times, but it's not made a big deal of though, so it's so you're able to bypass it quite easily, relatively speaking. The idea of it is set around the sort of gangster mafia family of the Corleone family, headed by Don Vito Corleone. Of course, his son Michael, which is obviously a famous name by itself due to the movies, Sonny Corleone, their daughter, and obviously the extended Corleone family, cousins and such, and then all their, consiglieres and the other types of position within this organisation. They have issues with other mafia families. There are murders and feuds and all sorts of things going on. It was more enjoyable than I expected it to be. I thought it would be, for me, very dark and gloomy and I wouldn't like it. But actually, whilst it has those elements in it, it's more... I know the writing is strong actually in this book. I do quite like the writing. It's simple, but strong. And frankly, it worked for me for that reason. So I would recommend this because if you want to know about obviously what The Godfather is, because of course The Godfather is a sort of iconic and influential source of material for many modern day things. The next book that I read was The Complete Roderick by John Sladek. This was originally 2 novels, so they would have been 2 much short novels rather than this quite large novel, although it's still not all that long really. This is a science fiction novel around a artificial intelligence called, unsurprisingly, Roderick. He starts off as a very basic small robot. He is a completely new artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligences do not work in this world. This is made by a tech company paid for by the government. They wanted something else and they made Roderick. He's apparently very lifelike because he actually gets mistaken as a pretty much human by, for instance, his school, because he ends up getting adopted by a family and treated as a real person, although obviously he doesn't look quite right, of course, because he might be sort of humanish but not that human. And it's a very interesting premise because, of course, this is sort of a becoming human story where you're discovering what it means to be human from a robotic point of view and how people integrate into different societies. However, I didn't really enjoy it that much because I thought there was too much sort of rambling going on, frankly, throughout this book. It could have been much tightly written and more to the point and more focused. The characters, some of them were frankly unpleasant and keep coming back again and again and again, which works for the plot, but it becomes a bit of a chore to read about because it's like, oh yes, these characters again. Oh yeah, and again. They're not as interesting done in this particular way. What with the slower writing style didn't work for me that well, but I can understand the ideas in this book and why it's quite well thought of, and I am glad I read it overall. I mean, yes, it may not have been my sort of favourite book of the month far from it, but it was worth reading overall. I am glad I read it. The next book that I read was The Feminine Future, edited by Mike Ashley. This is a short story collection by female authors, 14 of them in total. All of the authors were almost totally unknown to me. I'd vaguely heard of one of them in passing before, but the other 13 were totally unknown to me. And indeed, that's the point of this short story collection. Even the editor himself, one of the short stories is not known by anybody who the actual author was. They know it was a woman and they know she was from a particular city in America, and that's basically all they know. They don't even know whether it is a real name. This was the name she published under. She published one short story, which is in this collection. This is a very varied and curious collection of short stories by unknown or almost unknown science fiction authors. I really enjoyed it overall though because the authors were unknown, so I had no comparison. So I went into this blind, and it was actually really enjoyable because I didn't have any idea what to expect at all. I couldn't say, oh yes, this story is like this other author, because these are all totally unknown to me. Their writing styles are a little bit alternative as well because they're all authors that only wrote, for the most part, a relatively small amount of work. So there's very little to draw on with stories, so you're going into this blind, and I really enjoyed it because it's just a series of unexpected but fun short stories about all sorts of interesting and varied ideas, which I would greatly recommend overall. The next book that I read was King Rat by China Mieville. Now, as you may know before, I have read quite a few books by China Mieville, and for the most part I have liked most of them, not all of them. This is one of the ones, I'm happy to say, that I actually really liked. China Mieville is known for writing in the new weird subgenre, which is frankly what he almost created single-handedly. Other people are now sort of written into that, but he was kind of one of the first, almost 20 years ago now. And he's also known for writing weird and wonderful urban environments, and this is a very good example of that because this is a version of London, England, where you have the supernatural or magical in it, and it's like an extra layer on top, or in this case underneath, the real London, which he obviously knows about because he actually is London-based author himself. And this is about sort of the world of almost fairy tales in a way, because this is where you have a rat king who is, as you might have guessed, the king of the rats, although some of them don't always obey him. He's in human form in this novel. There's also a Nancy, who is the human form version of the king of, as you might have guessed, the spiders. There's also Lop Lop, who is the king of the birds, human form again. They're all strange and bizarre, but they all work well within this world. The main character is a guy called Saul. The book starts off with somebody murdering his father. He gets the blame for it, he gets arrested for murdering his own father, which he didn't do, and it goes from there in a really strange and surreal way. He gets involved in this weird underworld of London where the supernatural and all possibly magical elements of this world are exists, and his way of interacting with them is interesting and bizarre, and I just really enjoyed this novel because it's so weird. It's very dark, very grim at times, but it's also very compelling because it's, especially being in London, which I mean I'm not London based myself, but I do know London a little bit, you know, and obviously by reputation if nothing else, and it's nice to see this strange side of London, which frankly you don't see in any other novel, because this is a very strange novel indeed, and one that I greatly liked. I don't know if I might do a separate review of this. I'm unsure because I have done separate reviews of quite a few of his books in the past, but I'll see in the future. The penultimate book that I read in October was Voices from the Street by Philip K. Dick. Now, I've been slowly reading through an awfully large amount of Philip K. Dick over this year and indeed last year, and as you may have realised if you've watched previous videos of mine, overall he hasn't been that successful for me as an author. I've looked at a few of his books, most of them have failed for me, and I've had to say, although it's predictable at this point, this also did not work for me. He has a habit of having interesting and curious ideas, but his writing I don't personally find that strong mostly, and the one thing he's very particularly bad at, and well known for as far as I'm concerned, is he trails off at the end of books and doesn't really finish the book off very well. He just sort of meanders off and the book is left in a strange place without an ending, which this happens as well. The idea of this is one guy called Stuart Hadley. He's a normal everyday guy. He has a reasonable job with chances of promotion. He's married. He has a young baby, a newborn, and you think, oh yes, he should be happy with this, but he's not. He's essentially described and very much made to be a pessimist and thinks very negatively about himself and the world around him. And this is the one area that I had issues with this book, because I'm an optimist by nature. I know a few people that are very much pessimists by nature. I mean, I got perfectly well with them, and the way he describes his character, where his main overriding trait is his pessimism, doesn't work well for me, because I know people who are pessimistic, and I understand it because I'm the exact polar opposite myself. So the way he writes his pessimism is strange and it doesn't ring true to me. The psychology of it doesn't work for me, and that's why Philip K. Dick is known for writing strange psychology into his books. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. This doesn't, because it just doesn't make sense from what I know. And also the fact that the main character's trait is essentially he's a pessimist who's very self-destructive. That's like all there is to him. It wasn't enjoyable to read, and I'm not going to recommend this frankly to almost anybody, because it was dull. Finally, the last book I read was Dying of the Light by George R.R. Martin. And yes, this is the George R.R. Martin responsible for the Game of Thrones television series, which in book format is called A Song of Ice and Fire. I have read those novels and I greatly disliked them because I thought they were dark and gloomy and miserable. And unsurprisingly, I found this novel to be dark, gloomy and miserable, and I really badly dislike this novel, and I wouldn't recommend it to people, frankly, because it goes against me on a personal level, on a personality level, I should say. The synopsis of the book is quite simply: a guy called Dirk Talavian, he gets summoned back to a world called Warlorn, and his ex-wife, who is now married to another man. He meets both his ex-wife and his sort of love rival, I suppose you would say, on this world. It's a very strange situation. The reason for getting married is also slightly strange. There's some conflict between them because, of course, the ex-husband versus the new husband. The wife, who doesn't really, as I say, she's in a strange situation anyway. And overall, the ideas in it are good. The writing, as I said, is so dark and uninspiring that I couldn't stomach reading it. I mean, I barely managed to read this novel. It really was. It took me about 3 days to read a novel this short, which is quite an achievement for me. I normally would read this in a day, but this was so dull and miserable that it just slows me down really badly, and I actually needed a gap for a few days after this in between reading the next book, which obviously could be next month for that book. But yeah, this was not an enjoyable novel, and I wouldn't really recommend this overall. So with that said, that's it for all of the books I read in October. If you've read any of these books, or you would like to, then please leave a comment and we can talk about it. If you have any suggestions based on these, on books or authors that you think I might like to try, then again, please leave a comment, because I'm always interested in finding new authors and books new to me. All my social media links can be found in the description box below, as always. With that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.